Howard, ultimately, that is what this is all about, figuring out how what we are seeing here translates there to on the field, in the pads. I remember the first time we saw him, and you and Jerry came up to me and said, have you gone over and checked out Micah Parsons yet? And I did in relatively short order. It's obvious the moment you see him, even to a relatively untrained eye like my own, how dominant a football player this is.
Right, and when you watch him, and we heard Coach Pry talk about this, he's just scratching the surface. When you talk about a guy with his type of athleticism, what he's able to do, it makes defensive coordinators want to utilize him in so many different ways. But as Coach Pry talked about, that was part of the challenge for them as well, because you didn't want to overwhelm him with trying to learn so much. You wanted him to be able to just physically go out and use his instincts and be able to play. And this is what you see these guys running through the bags, getting high knees, and then you see the coach at the end that's going to point either left or right to get them to change directions. And you just get an opportunity to see just how smooth some of these players are.
And that was the thing that jumped out from the very beginning, the first time we saw him, just what a smooth athlete he is. Give us a sense for him going into the NFL. So he's 6'3", 245 pounds. He is a linebacker, and yet he is a guy you can certainly put on that edge as well.
You'll be able to put him on the edge. You'll be able to allow him to drop into the flat. You'll be able to allow him to cover tight ends, one-on-one. He has that type of ability. His 40 times showed you that. You show him here just how quick he is as far as his reactions are concerned. I think the sky really is the limit, because, Trevor, I don't know that I've seen, and I go back to LeVar Arrington and just how athletic and dominant as he was at Penn State, but I think Michael Parsons is probably a better athlete at this particular stage. You talk about Navarro Bowman, who was physically gifted as well. Parsons has a chance. If he had played last year, he had every chance to probably be the best linebacker to ever play. He needed to put that production in there, but his athleticism, when you start to stack him up against some of the greats, in which they've had a lot of them, and in later years they've become more athletic, like after LeVar Arrington. This is the type of player we're talking about, and that's why he was so coveted coming out of high school, just how great he was as an athlete and being able to do whatever he needed to do. And I go back to it again, Reverend. The fact that he did not play football last year, and many people have him as the first defensive player off the board, says all you need to know.
Well, that might be why he didn't play football last year.
But that's part of it. But to be able to hold that lofty expectation without playing last year is something that we've not seen. Hopefully we don't have to see something like this again, because it means we don't have not dealing with a pandemic.
Yes.
But it is crazy.
Yeah, I mean, look, he led him in tackles as a freshman. He started one game. He was a freshman All-American. So the production was there from the very beginning. And then you saw it. He was Big Ten Linebacker of the Year as a sophomore, the first to do that, 109 tackles to lead the team, 14 tackles for loss, 5 sacks. And then opted out last year, and certainly I don't think there's anyone, we have seen this with some elite players. Rashawn Slater out of Northwestern opted out as well. He will likely be the second tackle taken. He's a clear-cut first-round pick. I think people understand why some of these guys chose to opt out last year. That certainly won't be held against anyone. And again, there was just kind of the risk-reward as to whether or not it was worth it for some of these guys. Again, I think the thing that has popped out so far today is the 4.39 40. I mean, for a linebacker, Rob Rang was saying, our Fox Sports draft analyst was saying, 40 in the 4.6s is considered good enough for a linebacker. He's 4.39.
He's an incredible athlete. We're going to say incredible a couple times more in the next 50 minutes or so, but that's just really what we're dealing with here. And now you see the players coming off the edge. You see him in a 2-point stance. You were able to see Shaka, Toney in a 3-point stance. Again, they'll start on the right side and the left side. Now the coach will point him in a direction to get him to change directions, simulating maybe a coach or the quarterback or the running back, then breaking outside to get another opportunity to see the reaction time and the reaction speed.
So the other stuff is so quantifiable, what we've been watching so far, right? How many reps you get, it's a number. How far you jump, it's a number. How fast you run, a number. This is a little bit different. So what are the scouts watching here, and is there a way to measure it, or is this just where it becomes more of an art than a science?
This is exactly. You want to see guys be able to bend their knees. You want to see if, we hear Coach DiNardo always talking about offensive linemen, right? Whether you're a knee bender or waist bender. We don't want the waist benders, right? And these are drills that show you how they bend. And you see Shaka Toney bending the corner there, getting low, being able to run and rush the passer. And that's what they're going to see. They're taking all of these guys through this particular drill because I think this is where you want to see the versatility and what they can do. Toney's going to be a guy that's going to have his hand in the ground. Parsons can do both. Oweh can do the same thing. So seeing these guys be able to go through some of these drills helps the scouts continue to evaluate and try to figure out just where the weaknesses are in their games.
How much do you think what happens here plays in? In other words, I think we are a numbers obsessed society, and then when you come to this process, it has become very numbers driven, and yet all these people are here in person. They could get the numbers.
Yeah, you could get
right?
the numbers.
You have to be there to get the numbers. Do you see something here that says to you, bang, this is my guy, or is this more just about kind of getting a feel for them, getting a feel for how they work? You mentioned, I do think it was very telling that Parsons went back and said, I'm going to do this L drill again until I get it right. Is that kind of what this is more about, and certainly what this on the field stuff's about?
Being able to compete, and then being able to be in a situation where you have a coach that you're not familiar with take you through a drill, right? So where are your eyes? Are you looking down? Are you looking at coach in the eyes, understanding, or are you sitting there saying, yeah, I got this, I've done this a million times? What is your interaction with that coach? So again, these are all just boxes that coaches are trying to check off, and then you see the guys that are around the scouts that are also having an opportunity to see exactly what the body language, the nonverbals that these players are going through at times. You have general managers that are there. It's also important, right? So if a general manager's there, you best believe that there's a great deal of interest in these young people that are out there today. And it doesn't necessarily have to be all about Micah Parsons. It could be some of the other guys that are also out there. So that's just another important part of it. GM Colbert there from the Steelers, just another part of being able to watch these young people go through their workouts and see just how they take coaching and how they handle the pressure of a day like today.
Pretty interesting to see who different teams send. Again, Mike Tomlin's there. It's an easy trip for the Steelers. So, to have a GM and a coach says something. I mean, you don't send your GM and head coach if you don't think there's some possibility. But it is fascinating to see kind of at what level different teams bring personnel.
And let's remember, they can only bring a certain number. I believe 2 is the number of representatives from each organization that they are able to have there. And again, this is an opportunity to watch these guys as a viewer, see where their eyes are. They're listening to the coach is taking them through it. Where are their eyes? Do they understand what they're trying to do? This is good. Get an opportunity to go through, take a dry run. Show the coaches that you're engaged, you understand what you're trying to teach. Although all of these guys have been doing this drill since they showed up, right? But it's still, they're being talked to by a different coach that they are not familiar with. And what are they saying? What is that back and forth?
It is interesting to me, Howard, you and Jerry and I, of course, take our bus tour every year. We're unable to do it this season for obvious reasons, but have done it our first 13 years on the air at the Big Ten Network. And you get the players going through in the heat of August, going through these exact same drills that we are watching here. And it's pretty amazing to think, again, of watching Micah Parsons when he was a freshman do this, and now here he is doing it in front of personnel from virtually every NFL team.
And if you want to build a great program, you have to have special players to be able to go through that program so you can compete at a high level. And obviously last year wasn't a great year for Penn State, but they still, partly because this young man wasn't out there, but there's still an opportunity to get out there and be able to compete. And you need these players, these types of players that are going to be playing on Sundays to be able to turn the program and go out and compete for championships each and every year.
I mentioned Rob Rang, Fox Sports draft analyst, has Micah Parsons going 4th to Atlanta, the first non-QB drafted. Get a sense of Penn State players, and of course a great tradition of being picked highly in that draft, but 4th, that would be right up there this century. We saw Saquon Barkley go 2nd a few years ago. LeVar Arrington was a number 2 overall pick. Courtney Brown, a number 1 overall pick. But that would put him in some lofty company. Those are some impressive names.
No doubt about it. And also the other thing to keep in mind is each year obviously needs change for different teams. You could see a situation where if the need was greater for a impact defensive player at number 2, that they would go out and consider a guy like this. And I think still him going out and competing today and putting up the numbers that he's putting up, there's still going to be some conversations about what type of player he can be and what he can bring to the table.
Again, we've seen this drill that we were showing there a million times through the years. What ultimately are they trying to measure or gauge as you watch these guys go through?
Really trying to be able to flip their hips, be able to get around offensive linemen, the
flip
tackles,
your hips.
being able to flip the hips. Just get the hips around so that you're not rushing straight. No one's ever rushing straight up the field with your shoulders right to the offensive lineman. You want to be able to swim, to get around them, to make yourself as skinny as possible to try to be able to get through those creases. So how quickly can you flip your hips and get back upfield to be able to rush the passer or to be able to do your next move? So you see them going to the left, to the right, trying to work their hands, because that's also important to try to move that player out of the way to give yourself an advantage on the pass rush.
Had a slight technical issue there. Apologize for that, but back now out and watching Micah Parsons again. So pass rush drill there, Howard?
Being able to pass rush, being able to create an area for yourself to be able to get up the field. And this is where, he really had a knack when you talk about being able to make plays in the backfield, to be able to anticipate. He's not a guy that you want to put a tight end on. Hey, even at the next level in the National Football League, you don't want to put a tight end on him. Now, there's not to say that there's not one that can, but he's going to have a distinct advantage. So one of the things you do as a defensive coordinator is put yourself in a situation where a tight end has to try to take him on one-on-one as far as the scheme is concerned. I think guys inside will also have problems with him because he's able to play downhill and anticipate a lot of plays that are going to be happening.
So part of the appeal of Parsons is the ability to move him around, correct?
Move him around. That is absolutely, to me, that is, when you think about his assets and what he brings to the table, that's a big part of why he's so high on draft boards, because you can move him around. And it's about, like college now, it's about matchups. We talk about being able to play out in space. The defensive side of the game, you have to have players that can play in space as well. And he's going to be one of those players that can get out and play in space and it not be a hindrance where he has to come off the field when it's 3rd and 6 in a passing situation. He's going to be able to stay on the field, cover, as well as be able to rush.
So a 3-down player.
Yes, I'd have him on special teams. He can do everything.
He's a 4-down player, as far as you're concerned.
I mean, it's not a lot of things that this young fella can't do. And again, one of the things that we have to keep in mind is he's raw. He's not even close to where I think his ceiling can possibly be. See him there talking with Coach Billy Davis. That was one of my coaches when I was at the Carolina Panthers. He's now the linebacker coach for the Arizona Cardinals. So he would have some interest in an outside linebacker a little bit. So you'll see him coaching a little bit, taking them through their drills. He spent a couple of years over with Urban at Ohio State a couple of years back. So he's back at home in the National Football League, but you see him coaching these young guys up, tell them what he expects, try to take them through it. And again, this is part of the process of understanding these players. I'm going to walk you through it, and then I want you to be able to go out and execute what I've just coached you on. So can you retain the information that I just gave you? Yes, you've done this drill before, but you haven't heard it from this person's mouth before. So how are you taking it? How do you take it in? How are you able to execute?
Pretty interesting that the coaches get a chance to work individually with some of these players here, and it's part of what makes, again, why are you there as a coach? Yeah. This is one of the reasons you're there.
You want to be able to get your hands on them and coach them up, be able to coach them up as much as you can, and see what they're able to do and what they can't do. And this is just about, again, being able to be able to answer some of those questions that you may have.
See Jayson Oweh go through the drill here. Let's get more on what's going on the field from Crystal.
Hey guys, so there is a lot of buzz about Jayson Oweh out here right now. One scout told me that it's almost unfair that Micah has to go after Jayson. Micah is phenomenal, but Jayson's numbers just are so rare. Head coach of the Steelers, Mike Tomlin, also said the numbers are as expected, but this is a freak show out here, guys. So once again, a lot of buzz about Jayson Oweh, and we can't say that was unexpected.
I think he is utterly fascinating. I just think this is so indicative of the push and pull of this process. And again, I mean, these numbers are that 4.3640. Again, the absurdity of this from a front four player. Howard, like, put that into perspective for people. What does that number mean?
He's a freakish athlete. But I want people to focus on what he's doing right now as well. I want you to look at those numbers and understand how impressive those numbers are. But I'm going to tell you right now, what I just saw him in that back pedal, he was smoother than Micah Parsons was when he ran that drill. Right? So when you have an opportunity to see and compare these players, you just see how smooth they are and what they're doing, and then you start to see subtle differences. That's why I mentioned it's so important to be able to see what they're doing on the field. We know where Micah Parsons is as a potential draft pick. We know where he is. We're getting an opportunity to see a young man that is making himself a lot of money today.
Again, what's fascinating about Jayson Oweh is here is a guy who has played 24 college football games. So that's not a lot, right? I mean, when you compare him to how many games Shaka Toney has played at the same position for the same school. And yet Oweh, these numbers are eye-popping. You heard what Mike Tomlin had to say. And I do think there's so one thing that's really fascinating about a pro day is you're comparing guys to their own teammates, and you have to understand you're not really being compared to your own teammates. You're being compared to everyone at your position, but that's just the nature of pro day, that you're out here, and the only comparison we have in front of us that day are the other players on the field. But again, defensive ends or edge players, which is what Oweh is. He is an edge player. 4.41 was the fastest at the combine in 2019. He ran a 4.36.
Yeah. Really impressive. I think if we can zoom out a little bit so we can get this entire drill in, you'll see just how athletic. Oh my, just Rever. I'm not worried about him dropping that ball. Frankly, don't care, because that's why you're playing defense in the first place, because you can't catch. But if you watch just how fluid he is,
very fluid athlete,
coming out of those breaks. This is impressive. This really is impressive when you watch him move. It's crazy. And that's, you talk about just his raw athleticism and his youth as far as playing the game, his inexperience. It only takes one. Fall in love.
Yeah, now, okay, so that's really interesting. And we mentioned this earlier, but I think it bears repeating for those who don't know Jayson Oweh's story. He did not start playing football until his junior year in high school. So he is
fresh.
5 years into playing football. Right. Yeah,
he's fresh.
He is certainly fresh. How big a factor is that? And, when you talk about raw and you talk about upside, and I think about this a lot in the NBA, too. Mm-hmm. When you draft a player who is raw, how many years ahead are you thinking to when he can really help you? Because someone needs to be developed. And so what's the calculus there of, do we spend a late first round or early second round pick on someone who is, quote, raw, who hasn't played this game for as long as some other guys? And what are the types of franchises who have the luxury of being able to do that versus the challenge of, you need to win now, and we can't afford raw?
It depends on what you need, right? What do you need?
We are back in State College, and we have not really seen much of Pat Freiermuth, outstanding tight end, again set the Penn State career record for touchdowns by a tight end with 16. And we mentioned had that shoulder injury last season, which cut his year short, and so chose not to go through some of the weight room and agility drills, but we're going to see him out on the field. He's working with Roland Rivers, who's a quarterback from Slippery Rock, who is getting a chance to show his stuff here. But give us a sense of Freiermuth, who's considered, look, Kyle Pitts is crazy from Florida.
He's a different kind of guy.
It's a whole different category. But as a traditional tight end, Freiermuth is a, Rob Rang has him as a second-round pick.
Yeah, and really, he's not really even more of a traditional tight end. Because now what we've seen these tight ends turn into of more of hybrids, guys that can block at the point of attack, but they like to extend them from the line of scrimmage, get them into the slot, get them in motion to be able to do some different things. And that's one of the things that Freiermuth brings to the table. His ability to run routes and separate is really one of the great assets that you have. See him here being worked out by Alfredo Roberts for the Pittsburgh Steelers tight ends coach. So, again, an opportunity to work with him hands-on, to get an understanding of exactly what he's asking him to do. And, again, now you see him, this would be lined up in line of scrimmage, in-man on the line of scrimmage, running a little slant route or crossing route there for him. And this is what it's about. And then how do you react? Now, some people may say, well, he's walking back. This is a problem. Well, he's the only tight end out there, right? So you don't want to kill him. You want to get the most out of him you can. So you coach him hard, run the route hard, do what you need to do, catch the ball, walk it back, and then get your next route that you need to be able to run.
What's interesting about Freiermuth is, we talk a lot about, Jayson Oweh has been the exact kind of opposite case, where here is someone who is an unbelievable athlete who has yet to prove himself as a football player. Mm-hmm. Pat Freiermuth, everyone knows what a great football player he is. All you have to have done is watch some Penn State football over the last few years. This guy is a tremendous tight end. And so, again, I think that's what's fascinating about this is you watch this guy, and again, we didn't get to see him run the 40. Mm-hmm. We didn't get to see him lift weights for obvious reasons because of the shoulder. But this is about, hey, what does he do production-wise on the field? And we have seen plenty of that over the last few years. We
absolutely have. And, Rever, I want to go back to this video really quick, what we're watching here. You saw him going back and forth with Coach Roberts. One of the things at tight ends, you have to hit line marks. So you might run a post at 10 to 12 yards. And you saw him going back, making sure he knew exactly where he wants that break to be to understand. Now get it up the field, stay in bounds. That's why it's so interesting to continue to watch these guys interact with the coaches, because that's a big part of it.
You were mentioning earlier, too, a very solid blocker, and we take a look at Freiermuth. We're obviously going to see him catching passes. Again, 8 touchdowns as a freshman, did 7 as a sophomore, played just 4 games last year with 1 TD, but no question he can catch the ball.
Yeah, he can catch the ball with the best of them. Now, does he have that elite speed that he's going to run away from somebody? No, not necessarily. But it's about being able to get open, be able to work the field, understand what defenses are trying to do to you. I remember back, I think, Rever, we had him on set, and he got banged up in practice, and he was like, wait a minute, I'm supposed to be on with you guys, and I got hurt. I had to ask Chris, am I still going to be able to do the interview with these guys? So, he's a guy that has some personality as well. Now you see him working outside to be able to show what he can do, showing that separation, being able to run that out route at a certain depth. You see him doing a good job, and the timing seems to be there as well.
Let's be honest. These young people, they grow up and they think, if I can ever be on the set with DiNardo, if I could just share a set with DiNardo, that would be
and
a career highlight. And
right?
So he thought that was going to be taken away from him, and you can't blame him for being concerned. But this is a football player.
Yeah.
He is a really good football player. Can you compare him to someone in the NFL?
Well, I think you look at guys like Hockenson that are able to go out and play. Hockenson may have a little bit more speed maybe, but these are two guys that, to me, how you separate yourself, it was a time as a tight end you separated yourself by being able to run routes because everyone was an inline blocker. Now, the way you're able to separate yourself is to be able to, are you able to create matchup problems for outside linebackers, for nickels that may try to cover. You see him at 6'5", 251. That's a big player, right? So you talk about getting him down the field and being able to have him block at the line of scrimmage. Can he be that every down player? And listen, there's always some growth that has to go in to the position when you go from the college game to the pro game as far as the blocking is concerned, because these guys that they're going to be blocking are talent. They are
some serious guys.
Yeah. And a lot of times the highest paid guys on the other team.
Right.
We talk about these rush ins. So, as he continues to establish himself, and he's always had a willingness to be able to do that sort of thing, so that gives him a leg up. So now it's about fit. It's about who has a need for a player that possesses his skill set.
You talk about last year. We saw Cole Kmet go in the second round out of Notre Dame to the Bears.
Yeah, and
perhaps
I would
a comparable player there.
I would put him a little ahead of Cole Kmet as far as blocking is concerned. Cole was a decent blocker, but he wasn't asked to do a lot of that at Notre Dame. He's been asked to do some of that, a little bit more of that at Penn State, so that gives him the chance to be able to do it. And then if you're asked to do it in practice, that helps you as well. See him running the comeback route there from the inside position. You still want to see, getting in and out of the breaks, drops his hips, pats the feet, gets back, eyes flip around. So, Penn State has had a lot of success with their tight ends at that position, going all the way back, at least for me, with Kyle Brady. It was just an absolute monster at the tight end position. A lot of people thought he was an extra tackle. He was just that big and athletic out there. But they've changed, and they've continued to evolve, and he's just another player in the long line of players that have been able to take their game not only at Penn State and play well, but to elevate it and take it to the National Football League and have success.
Yeah, it's interesting. We always think of linebacker U, but they have produced some great tight ends, among the best in this league. Iowa certainly could lay claim to that, I think, as well. But just in terms of utilizing the position and developing really good players at the college level who translate to the pro level.
Really, really done a good job. You look at Penn State, you look at places like Iowa, they've got this tight end thing figured out.
Yeah. And it can be such a weapon, as we've seen, certainly at the NFL level, because it's the kind of players who can create some mismatches.
Yeah, it's outstanding. So I think you'll see him run a post here. Run the corner. You saw him nod it to the inside. The coaches wanted him to nod it to try to get the defender to bite on the in route to the post, and you take it to the high corner route there. So, I think he's doing an outstanding job as well. When you talk about going out and checking the boxes, right? Again, don't be concerned that he's walking back. He's the only tight end working today. So
yeah, you run back and then you're exhausted by the time you get back. You need that, right? When we watch this at practice, there are 6 guys going through this drill.
And so let's also understand that he's also being told to do that as well.
Okay. Hey, I want to ask you this, and you may not know the answer, which never ask a question you don't know the answer to. But the fact that he didn't run it all today, that he didn't do any weight room stuff. First of all, is that a concern, or is there just an understanding, hey, this guy had shoulder surgery? But then, secondly, are teams going to want to see him go through that at some point?
Well, he's had the shoulder injury, right? So that eliminates the weights. You can get away with that. I think that's not a big issue. The 40 time, is it a question? Yeah, I think it still becomes a question because you don't have – that's just one more data point you don't have as an organization to be able to check off to say you've seen it. Now, I don't know that maybe he's going to run at a later date. I'm not sure, but he didn't run today. So he obviously feels comfortable with what he's put on tape as far as his speed is concerned to not go out and run unless he has some sort of an injury with his lower body. And I'm guessing that's not the case because he looks great going through his work on the field.
Again, Pat Freiermuth, really good size at that tight end spot, 6'4", 258. It's kind of prototypical, Howard.
The size you want. Again, you see him being coached up. Here, wants to show him a linebacker, so now he's got to read the linebacker. Where's the linebacker? Walled him off, get it up the field. So, again, just taking him through the paces. It's not full speed necessarily, but it's about being able to receive the information, be able to retain it, and then go out and run that play to the best of your ability and make it happen. So putting him through a couple of scenarios that maybe the Pittsburgh Steelers use as far as the route combinations that they may use with the Steelers. He's just going through a lot of that right now at this point.
And you're watching Penn State's Pro Day here on the Big Ten Network. We're watching Pat Freiermuth, one of the top tight ends in this draft. I think there's a consensus that Kyle Pitts is the top tight end, Howard, but after that, this may be the next guy.
He's got an opportunity to be there, right? To be able to solidify himself, and that's why the Pro Days are important, right? Be able to go out and answer those questions.
You see where Rob Rang has projected Pat Freiermuth a second-round pick. As Micah Parsons, again, is the first non-quarterback off the board at the number 4 overall pick. Oweh second round, but the first pick of the second round, according to Rob. And then you see Shaka Toney, more of a 4th or 5th round guy, and then a couple offensive linemen who we've seen bits and pieces of, Will Fries, Michael Manette.
I think these players have done themselves well today in what they've done thus far. And again, it's about, as a player, really the only thing you can do is control the controllables and go out and try to put up the best performance you possibly can so that it forces scouts and general managers to go back into the room and say, wait a minute, we need to take a second look. Because that's what you're going to hear these guys when they go back.
We're watching Will Fries as well as Michael Manette. And interestingly, Steven Gonzalez, you see him, he's the one with his hands on his hips right now. That is Steven Gonzalez. He, as you may recall, graduated a year ago, actually signed with the Cardinals as a free agent, but got cut. And because there was no combine, no pro day last year, Penn State gave him the opportunity to come back with all these scouts present and kind of show off his stuff, Howard, and see whether he can get into a camp again this year. He's not draft eligible. He would be signed as a free agent. He's already been through the draft process, but a guy who was a really good player for them through the years, and just a nice gesture here by Penn State to give him the opportunity to show what he can do.
An outstanding gesture by Penn State to allow one of your former players to, obviously come out and be able to compete, because that's what it's about. And it's about relationships as well. And we've seen this coaching staff being out here supporting their players, talking with them, giving them advice through this process. And this is an important part of it, because if you're a bad guy, right, this doesn't happen.
Right.
It doesn't happen. They don't want you back on campus. But this speaks to the character of this young man for Penn State to invite him back to get another opportunity to show what he can do for the NFL scouts.
Well, I'll tell you what, he had 32 bench press reps. That was the most of any player out there today. So, again, that gives you a sense. I mean, this is a really strong guy, a guard, 6'4", 332. 32 reps is awfully impressive.
Yeah, that's really impressive. Kind of one of the things you want to see out of your interior guys to be able to do that. And I could tell when he got started here, just the momentum and the rate of speed that he's going through this, that he was going to put up some big numbers. But again, you got to be able to be strong if you're an interior player. talking about defensive tackles, talking about guards and centers to be able to hold people off. And he definitely checks the box there. It's just about getting into the right system and getting that opportunity to be able to show his wares and be able to elevate himself.
So there you see Gonzalez. We'll be interested to see whether or not this day helps him. We're seeing him go through drills with Will Fries, another guard prospect, 6'6", 309. He's played tackle and guard. They like his versatility a lot at the next level, Howard.
Yeah, being able to do that is important. You see the drill that they're going through now, firing off on the bag. They want to see what type of base you have, your elbows in, thumbs up, being able to drive the player back, being able to get those hands in there, not hitting it with your forehead to try to get angles, but getting those arms at a good position inside to be able to move your feet, to be able to move people.
I'll show you what Fries did in the weight room. He had 24 reps on the bench. And again, it's a uniform weight, 225 pounds for everyone. 24 reps, had a 31-inch vertical, a broad jump of 9 foot 7 inches.
Nice work for him. It was a nice number. As I said, Coach Franklin's excited about it. But it's really just about going out and continue to show what you can do, trying to max out your best with this 225.
Again, just to give you some perspective, Chris Lindstrom of Boston College was a first-round pick 2 years ago at guard. He did 25 bench reps, so 24 for Fries is pretty representative. You see a 31-inch vertical.
But I think one of the things you talk about interior players, particularly linemen, you're going to rely upon that tape more so than anything else. Yeah. You want to be able to see them moving people, good feet, being able to bend their knees, not being waist benders, as Coach DiNardo likes to call them, being able to maneuver their athleticism as well. You got to be able to see that. And that's what we're seeing in this drill now. You see the defender with the pad in his hand is starting to work his way outside. What he's trying to represent is trying to get outside to see just how that, if you're playing the tackle or the guard position, being able to get out and try to create leverage because you want to be able to seal the edge. You don't want to be shut down as far as that edge's presence is concerned. You want to be able to hook that defender so that the ball can go outside if that's where it's supposed to go on that particular play. And that's one of the drills they use to try to show the footwork and just the athleticism, lateral movement to be able to get outside.
So you would say for a lineman in general, what they showed in college and what shows on tape is generally more important than what we're seeing here? Or is it possible that it is?
I think absolutely. It's really about what's on that tape. And in general, people want to see the tape. They want to see, because that answers most of the questions.
Yeah.
If you come in here and you're able to put up some huge numbers, you know, that just solidifies and substantiates where a team or an organization of coaches feel you are as a player. This is another one of those drills. They want to see your footwork, trying to get outside, that you're not tripping over yourself. First thing they want to do, if you're going to the left, they want you to be able to reach with that left foot. That's why the coach is taking him through it. Now what he's taking him through is a counter. This is a move that you would use if you were trying to run inside counter. You'll see him step behind himself and then be able to get inside to be able to block that linebacker or whoever that next level defender will be. So these are just some of the drills that they're taking him through to show the athleticism. You saw that. That was really quick, really well done there, and you can see an older player who's done more of this, and you saw his athleticism, just how nifty he can be doing that drill, and now they'll try to take it the other way.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting to see. And again, we're comparing them to one another. They could both be really good players, and it's not an either or, but it's just interesting to see where the strengths are, literally and figuratively, right? I mean, Gonzalez, 32 reps, Fries, 24 reps on the bench, but you know, Fries jumped 6 inches higher on the vertical. So again, you just kind of get a sense of different guys have different strengths, and your job is to take all of that, to take what you see on tape. if you're a scout or a GM, and figure out how it all fits together is a big puzzle.
It's a big puzzle and part of it. And when you're going through this drill right here, when I'm watching this drill, I'm looking at the knees down. I'm not looking at anything else. I want to see their feet, how they're able to move and what's going on after knowing it. Okay, I'm going to see one drill where they're pulling. I'm going to see a different drill when they're trying to step back to be able to do a different drill or getting outside. So it's a lot of these different things. It's about footwork when you talk about offensive linemen, and that's why I say I focus knees down when you're watching them go through some of these drills that they're doing right now.
It's been fascinating to go through all of these different cases here today because each player has their own story and has their own challenges that they're, what they're trying to prove. For Pat Freiermuth, part of it is recovered from the injury, kind of where does he stand physically? He is standing by with Crystal.
Pat, you can finally exhale. Your day is over. What went into the decision to only participate in the individual drills, and how do you think you did out there?
Yeah, so the decision to do that was just because obviously I had season-ending surgery on my shoulder. I'm still kind of recovering from that. I'm probably like 2 to 3 weeks away from being fully cleared and for contact, so I didn't really have enough time training. So I just felt comfortable to go out there and do what I had to do on the field, and I think I did really well. I think I did all I needed to do to show them that the shoulder's not affecting me, and I took the right process going forward to the draft.
With that season-ending injury, what do you want NFL teams to know about your physical health and your restored physicality as you work to recover?
Yeah, this was the first major injury I've ever had. The first 5 games of my whole entire career, including elementary school and high school, missing games. So I'm very durable, and my body, I take it very serious, and I always do the pre-stretch and pre-practice stuff like that. So my body is my tool, and I take great pride in it. So this was just kind of a fluke injury, and I'm getting that physicality back, and I feel great going into the draft.
Good to hear, Pat. Listen, a lot of times NFL teams salivate over tight ends who can not only catch the ball but block, particularly at the line of scrimmage. Do you think that you can develop into a player who can consistently do both in the NFL?
Yeah, I definitely think I can, and I think that's what the teams have been saying about me. My tight ends coach here, Coach Bowen, he really took great pride in making sure I was a well-rounded tight end, all 3 phases, and that's pass protection, run blocking, and catching the ball. So, I think I'm a very good tight end in all 3 of those phases, and I think I'm very well-rounded. So, I just got to obviously tune my game, going at the next level, and keep getting better. But I think I'm, as polished as you can get.
Pat, thank you so much. We'll send it back to the studio. Dave, Howard.
Thank you.
Crystal, thanks. Congratulations to Pat on a good performance here today as we take a look at what we saw from Pat Freiermuth. And again, all of it was on the field, Howard.
Yeah, nice job again, just working the routes, running the crossing route, doing a good job there, extending the hands and catching it. And that's what I think you saw a lot of. It's about catching the ball out away from the body, showing the strength that he has in those hands to be able to make plays, attacking the ball, running different routes. And you're exactly right. You got to answer those questions, and he feels comfortable. That explains why he didn't run the 40. He says he's comfortable with the body of work that he's put out there and just wanted to make sure he's been able to train at his full capacity. He said since he wasn't able to do that, one of the reasons he wasn't able to get in the weight room and do some of those different things.